After retiring from the NFL, Pat Carter started a second career as a high school math teacher. He wasn't prepared for how challenging that job would be. And it was made worse because numerous concussions throughout his career had robbed him of his ability to handle stress well. He recalls one day in particular. A boy had hurled an ugly name in his direction on the way out the door at the end of class. It took every ounce of self-restraint Pat could muster to refrain from losing his temper and saying or doing something he shouldn't. He hadn't been that way when he was younger, but his self-control had worsened over the years, and he hadn't yet made the connection to the many concussions he'd suffered during his football career. Pat's journey to the NFL began with playing elementary school football. After earning the prestigious All-American title at Florida State University, he realized his dream, making it to the NFL. For 10 years, he played tight end for the Detroit Lions, Los Angeles Rams, Houston Oilers, St. Louis Rams, and Arizona Cardinals. Over the course of 800 or 900 practices and dozens of high-stakes games, Pat's body and brain took a beating. It was an occupational hazard Pat expected and accepted without question. He has no idea how many concussions he suffered during his career. He says, if you got your bell rung, you sat out for a play or two, then got back into the game. If you didn't, you were considered cowardly or weak, and not someone living up to expectations. Pat anticipated he'd be dealing with orthopedic issues when he became, as he called it, an old man. But he never thought about what all those hits would do to his brain. The brain issues showed up long before Pat was the old man he'd envisioned. Even in his 30s, he generally couldn't fall asleep until 3 or 4 a.m. He seldom slept more than 3 or 4 hours a night. Pat suffered from severe anxiety. It didn't take much to stress him out. His behavior caused strain in his marriage, and he'd frequently overreact. Minor disagreements turned into big blow-ups. He and his wife would go to separate parts of the house and not speak to each other for days. He wanted to be alone all the time, and he withdrew from daily life. That wasn't all. Pat had become impulsive and forgetful. He bought things he didn't need or want. He'd forget plans the couple had made. He'd watch a TV show he'd seen before but wouldn't remember it. Pat was miserable. Then along came a study in 2014 that Pat learned about from a friend. It was being conducted with former NFL players by psychotherapist Dr. George Roselle. Dr. Roselle is founder of MindSpa Integrative Wellness Center in Sarasota, Florida. He's also board certified in Neurofeedback and quantitative EEG. The study involved training former NFL players suffering from the effects of repetitive head trauma with a type of neurofeedback called ultra-low power pulsed electrical feedback. This specialized neurofeedback is believed to help with concussion symptoms. The goal was to evaluate if their concussion symptoms improved. Pat enrolled despite protests from his wife. She thought he'd be better off getting on medication, but Pat pushed back. He was already taking too many medications for his physical injuries. He figured he didn't have anything to lose by trying a non-medication therapy first. By the time he ended the study's course of 20 neurofeedback sessions, Pat's symptoms had improved remarkably. He was getting along better with his wife. He wasn't as moody or rigid or grouchy. His impulsivity lessened. His memory improved, and he started going to sleep more easily and sleeping at least 6 hours a night. His wife noticed these and other changes in him and went from being skeptical of neurofeedback to being a believer. Because of Pat's impressive improvement, he spreads the neurofeedback message around the ex-NFL world. Whenever he identifies someone he thinks could benefit, he encourages them to check it out. Pat still does occasional tune-ups at Dr. Roselle's MindSpa. They help him maintain maximal functioning and minimize falling back into bad habits, like overreacting and becoming impatient. Pat feels like his life was radically improved with neurofeedback, and he calls it a blessing.
Pat Carter, who suffered multiple concussions, could have faced years or decades of struggle. It is remarkable he was able to change his brain and change his life with the help of neurofeedback. Unfortunately, Few doctors are aware of this powerful tool, which can help reset the brain. Fortunately, Pat found it on his own. There really aren't medications that would produce such a significant change for the kind of injuries Pat had. But this is not limited to football players. Just because you don't get a diagnosis of concussion doesn't mean your brain wasn't affected. We've seen people of all ages who've whacked their head and then struggle for years with emotions, attention issues, impulsivity, sleep issues that medications weren't a good solution for. Many never realized those whacks to the head are contributing to their symptoms. Their health professionals don't usually recognize it either. People are often told at the time, they'll be fine, or they'll get over it, or there was nothing wrong. But long-term concussion symptoms are not uncommon. In particular, there's often an increase in symptoms over time, including anxiety, executive function, more ADHD, more anger, more sleep issues, and just having a harder time holding it together. Neurofeedback made a difference in Pat Carter's life. It has also made a difference in the lives of tens of thousands of other people. Neurofeedback is real. Read Pat's full story in our soon-to-be published book, Lives Transformed by Neurofeedback. Stories of triumph over anxiety, trauma, concussion, ADHD, addiction, and more. Harnessing neuroplasticity with neurofeedback.